going back and forth.
I was going to do like a little intro while you were doing that, and I totally forgot. But thank you, everybody, for coming. And I know we have probably some other people who are going to try to join us, but I'm basically just going to turn it over to John. If you have a burning question that you want to put in the chat, we'll moderate the chat a little bit.
Yeah.
If you want to just listen till the end and save your questions for the end, that would be great also.
Perfect. Yeah, so tonight, just in case, well, my name is John Stallone. I'm going to be talking about the commonality that links all calling. We're going to relate it to elk hunting specifically. I'm doing this live too on Instagram. So those of you that are watching this Instagram, if you want to get in the room and actually get in on this, check out my my story, and the link is in there. We're going to talk about the commonality that links all hunting, or excuse me, all calling. A little bit about myself. I'm an outdoor writer, hunting guide here in Arizona. I'm a podcast host and I guess a social media figure. And I produced outdoor film and TV for about 18 years. So if you're so inclined to find out any more about me, you can go to johnstallone.me, which is my blog, and you'll be able to look into that. So we're going to talk about the commonality that links all calling. And so no matter what it is that you're hunting, when you're using a call, there's always a point that the animal you're calling feels that they should see what's calling to them. And this is usually where they hang up. Oh, yeah. Okay, I see now. There's people showing up. Sorry, guys. So they get to a spot and they feel like they should see something. Now, I don't have the secret sauce that'll prevent you from getting those animals that have hung up to come in, but what I do have is the recipe to choose the right setup so that they won't hang up to begin with. And honestly, this system works for all animals: elk, deer, turkey, predators, you name it. I've heard a few guys in the industry refer to it as the doorway principle or the calling room. Simply put, it's the area which the animal that you are calling suspects to see what is calling to them. You hear it all the time. You know, I called in this coyote and he hung up further out from where I could shoot him. Or this turkey came running in and hung up and wouldn't come into the clearing. I called in this bull, but he hung up at 80 yards. I think the person who describes it the best is Chris Rowe of Rowe Hunting Resources. Chris uses a similar principle, and he describes it as like this. So if you were downstairs or in another room and you heard your wife calling to you, hey babe, you go over to the room that you thought you heard the noise coming from, and you'd look in real quick. And if you didn't see her, you'd say, hey babe, where are you? And you'd call back to her. And if she answered you from that room that you're looking into and you couldn't see her, you would think something was up. So the same thing goes for animals. You know, they want to verify with their eyes and with their nose what they're hearing. That's why the setup is the most important aspect of calling. Most guys focus all their time and energy into being a good caller or a realistic caller. I'm not saying that that's not important. You know, it's important for you to sound good and to have proper cadences and timing and such, but you can certainly get by with being a mediocre caller if you know how to choose your setups. So we're going to talk about building the room. Now, I know what most of you guys are thinking right now is, from what I just said, is decoy. Oh, why don't I just use a decoy? So that way, when they come to that spot, they'll have something to look at. I use decoys here and there. I mainly use decoys to get from one spot to another where I need to cross someplace where I can be seen. But I don't like using decoys when I'm calling, because more times than not, they've messed me up. So what I do is I try to pick the right setup that forces an animal to step into the room. And the room is my kill zone. It is my effective range with the weapon that I'm using. So when I'm choosing a location to call from, I want to try to be on the other side of the caller, or excuse me, the other side of the call rather. And what I mean by that is I want you to imagine what the animal is going to do, how he's going to come into an area using the wind, given the terrain that's in front of him, the vegetation, any obstructions, deadfall, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Think about it. Look at it. Try to be on the other side of the call. And that's like the most important thing with calling anything, especially elk hunting, is you want to be able to visualize what the animal is going to do, how he's going to react to what you're calling, and how he's going to approach an area, and how you can use that to your advantage. You know, you got to look at it from the perspective of every tool that he has. Think about how he's going to hear that sound, how he's going to use the wind, and how is he going to be able to get around any obstructions and vegetation that's in the way. The room that you're creating can be a number of terrain features. It could be vegetation, it could be landscape features, rock croppings, outcroppings, deadfall, blah, 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 anything. And it really depends heavily on what you've got to work with. I'm going to share, if I could figure out how to do this here again. Share screen, excuse me. Okay, so I am going to share with you, here we go. I can see a bunch of your heads. Can you guys see that okay? Yes or no? Yeah, good. Okay, you know, I'm gonna try to make it bigger here so I can, from current slide, there we go. Okay, so this is actually a scenario that we were in, and I went back on Google Earth and I recreated it for you guys. The elk, there was a bull elk feeding with a couple of cows right here, but I could tell he wasn't really tending those cows, and we glassed them up. So I dropped down into this, these JPs down here, or juniper pinions. And I looked on my aerial, on my Onyx, and I looked to see what was going to be the best room. Now you can see here that there's a clearing right here. I don't know if you guys, hopefully you can see my arrow. There's a clearing right here, and there's a clearing right here. Both of these probably would have worked. We chose this one because I was afraid that I might be seen setting my hunter up in this one, because the elk were such a clear sight of the backside of this. And I like the fact that this had some bigger trees in the front that he couldn't see. So what I did was I set the hunter, my arrow was not very good. I set the hunter up here so that he was kind of facing this way. And I sat back in these trees and I called. The wind, as you can see, the wind was crossing like this. So I began to call, and this elk came in through here, and he came through here, and he couldn't see what was calling to him, and he kept coming towards where he heard the sound from. And by the time he realized, or maybe he didn't even realize it, I don't think he did actually. I'm going to show you the video here in 1 second, but that it was too late in my hunter shot. Unfortunately, my hunter made a bad shot, but the setup was great. So here we go. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so now you can see he actually stopped there to display a little bit because he was excited. He heard some hot cows, so he raked on that tree just a bit when he came in. And see, I'm pulling him right to me, the sound. I stopped calling. Once I saw him coming, I stopped calling because I wanted curiosity to kill the cat. So now he's flemming, he's looking for, tasting the air right there. My hunter, I should have stopped the bull, but he didn't. I didn't stop him, and my hunter didn't stop him. And he took a shot and hit him a little far back, and unfortunately we didn't find that. So that's one of the scenarios right there. I'm going to go back to that. Just going back to this to look at it. So it's about recognizing what the room actually is. And so in this case, it was just a little clearing in some thicker trees, and I was pulling that elk into where he had to come to look to see. I was going to go to my next, but if anybody has any questions, I think now would be a good time to just stop real quick to ask if anybody has any questions. I know there was a few people that joined in way after I gave my definition of what the room is and what we're actually talking about.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
So if you're calling and you don't know where the target animal is, where it's going to come from, how do you set up your room? Like in your example, you knew where the elk was.
Okay.
And that's like, maybe like as a beginner, I might not know. I'm just kind of calling.
Okay, so when you blind call, you always want to set yourself up in a room. Same scenario. Okay. Now, what's going to determine that is your wind. Okay. So the wind, with the way that your wind is going, 9 times out of 10, the elk are not going to come where they're not going to come in where they catch your wind. So if you're setting up a blind call, this scenario still works. Like if you think, or if you hear elk, let's say, because you're not going to just call without hearing elk, maybe, I'm assuming. I would wait to hear elk, get a response back from bugling. I mean, if you're having a really hard time locating elk and you have no other choice and you want to do a breeding sequence, you still want to put yourself in thick cover and into an area that he has to walk into and present a shot. Now, depending on where you're hunting, like for instance, when I was hunting in Oregon on the coast, the rooms are only 10 yards. I mean, there is no, everything's a room, like because it's so thick, they have to get that close to see. So it becomes more about your ability to call too, and how much you're creating the illusion of what you're trying to say. So if you're trying to, challengeable, then you gotta stick with that. If you're trying to coax them in because you're a hot cow, you got to create the whole illusion of what's going on. Breeding sequence, same thing. You're talking, I'm a hot cow, and you're giving little hints that there's a bull there that's excited, glunking, doing stuff like that say that there's a hot cow. But when it comes to the room, it really doesn't change. In the sense that you are looking for a spot that helps you direct or gives you a really good idea of how the elk is going to move into that area for you to shoot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before I move on to the next example? No? Okay. All right. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing that for a second. You guys can see my beautiful face. So my next example, and this really works better than I think any setup that I use, and that's putting a rise in the terrain, like a bump, a hill, whatever, between me and the elk. So whenever that's possible, and that might not be a whole lot, but as long as if it's high enough to hide the elk's body for a long enough period of time that he could get close enough for you to shoot him, that's all that matters. And usually with this scenario, especially if you're blind calling, you're basically going to see tips of antlers and he's going to be in your lap and you're going to have to be ready to shoot. That's the only drawback, is that by the time they're in your room and they're coming to see what's calling to them, it's going to be too late. They're going to be in your kill zone and you got to be ready to go. The setup is similar in the way that you want the wind, your backdrop, all the stuff that we talked about in the first scenario, the same. Meaning you want to be in a good concealed spot. You want to be in a spot where he has to come looking for the call. And that's the most important thing. And I don't know if I really stressed that enough in the first example, is you want them to have to come looking for the call. I'll use a quick example in predator hunting, and I use a Fox Pro. Okay, and I will hide my Fox Pro in a bush that's big enough to conceal whatever animal it is that I'm making the sound of. Okay, so if I'm doing a rabbit, it's got to be big enough to hold a rabbit. But if I'm doing a fawn in distress, it's got to be big enough to hide a fawn in distress. And I set it up so that the call is on the side of me, between me and the bush that I'm hiding it in, so that a coyote has to come around the bush to see what's making the call. And by that time, it's too late, and that's how I shoot him with the bow. It's the same thing with elk. Now, a lot of states you're not allowed to use an electronic caller, so the caller has to either be your buddy or it has to be you, and you have to, again, be on the other side of the call and understand and try to visualize how that elk is going to use the terrain to get to where you are. So you want to find a stand site that, when I say stand site, okay, I'm not talking about a tree stand. A calling stand, from here on out, if I say stand, it means where you're setting up to call. That's in a spot where it's concealing you, and that you're also going to be able to see the elk before they can see you. This is actually, I'm going to share my screen again here. All right, this is a little drawing that I made, okay? And you can see the bow hunter is up against some rocks, and he's got this little rise against him, and there's a bull on the opposite side, right? So I've called to this bull. I can hear, by the way he's responding, I can hear him walking towards. I stop calling. That bull has to come up this, and to the top to see down to where I'm calling. So he might even come all the way, but more than likely, he's just going to come to the top and give you a frontal shot. If you're not comfortable taking a frontal shot, wait a few seconds. If he gets, leery that there's nothing there, or he gets bored, he's going to eventually turn around. Usually elk turn around kind of slow. He might present the shoulder, behind the shoulder shot, and you could give him a quarter of a way shot there. I'm going to show you, this is another video. I'm going to make this big here. Okay. This is an elk I called in, little raghorn for a buddy of mine that shot him. But you could see, once I hit the play button, you'll be able to see that the rise is really not that, it's not really that big. But it's just enough that he had to come up to see over. Here we go. Now, in this scenario, can you guys see my hands gesturing and stuff? I don't even know. Okay, good. I didn't know if I had to stop the share screen to do that. So if you can picture, I'm here, the rise is here, the elk was over there. Now, we were kind of just slowly walking through the woods, and I peeked over the top of this, and I saw this elk bedded like 100 yards away. We got, kind of lucky in this scenario. But let's say I was calling, I could hear an elk bugling. I got to this rise, and I said, you know what? We're close enough. We're close enough to that bugle, okay? I set up back here. You put your hunter, or if you're hunting by yourself, you call from here, and once you realize he's reacting, you move up, okay? move up to the lip and off to the side. So in this scenario, I'm here, the rise is here, the elk is here, my hunter was here. Okay. But if you're calling by yourself, you call from here and if you can't tell, you just stay here and he's going to come over and give you a frontal shot. But if you can move to here, you'll get that broadside shot like was happened in that video. Any questions so far? Oops. What did I do? Okay. Anybody have any other questions? No? All right.
Can you talk about, so, you know, like on social media, I kind of see a lot of shit given about frontal shots. You got to hear like some people talk about frontal shots. Any like what are the circumstances in which you would take one versus not take one?
It's all, it's like a very individual thing. Yeah. So it's how comfortable you feel with your equipment, what bow you're shooting, what poundage you're shooting, what arrow setup you're shooting, but and how accurate of a shooter, how practiced you are at it. It's a very deadly shot, but the margin for error is high. So, if you're planning on taking a frontal shot, you got to know that your window of opportunity is really only about 12 inches oval. Okay. So with that, you just got to set yourself limits. Okay, I'm not taking a frontal shot unless it's 20 yards or less or 30 yards or less. But guys do it every year. And unfortunately, if you're hunting by yourself, I'm going to say 8 times out of 10, that's the shot you're going to be presented with, because the animal's going to want to come in. The bull's going to want to come in straight on. They're going to come straight to the call. Now, the caveat to that is if you set your room up right and you have the wind working a certain way, he might want to turn and circle. But if the only way that really works is if he turns and circles and he's outside of the room, you're still not going to get a shot. And then he's going to hit your wind and he's going to be gone. So the only time, you're trying to get an animal to do something that you want, So it's really important for you to look at the terrain and look at the vegetation and say, okay, I know he's not going to be able to see into here. I know he's not going to be able to look into where I'm at until he gets to this point. I'm going to stop calling even sooner. So when he gets to this point, if he's still too nervous and he wants to get the wind, he might already be in your room to start walking that way and give you that shot. And again, like I said earlier on the hilltop shot, if you're afraid to take a frontal shot, a lot of times he'll stop, he'll pause, he'll look down, he'll look around, and then he'll take that 1/2 step and turn like this, and he's going to give you that open shoulder here. Again, not super high percentage shot unless he, gives you a full quartering or turns completely broadside, but it's better than, trying to shoot out of small, because, they got a really, really heavy breastbone right here. I think actually, Corey Jacobson just did a piece specifically on the frontal shot, and he shows the anatomy and all that stuff with overlays. It was actually pretty good. It's something, if you have an elk tag, you should be looking at, because if you've never taken that shot and you're going to be, I can almost guarantee you, if you call one in on your own, that's one of the shots you're going to see. Where are you hunting?
Oregon.
Yeah, for sure. Matter of fact, I had about 4 shot opportunities in Oregon, and every single one was front on, except for the one that I took and I lost. Unfortunately, I lost on elk, but I made a bonehead move. And the one spot that was actually a big clearing, a big clearing. I say a big clearing. The big clearing for Oregon, it was like 45 yards or 50 yards or whatever. And I picked the wrong pin, which is something I never do, but it happened, and I hit him low. But anyway, the frontal shot is a good shot. You know, I use it on deer all the time. Now, deer is a smaller animal, a lot less bones, but a lot less dense bones and stuff. But I think it could be a really effective shot. Okay, I'm going to go on my next example. This is kind of the opposite of the elk having to come up to the top. This is, if you're on a top, if you can picture maybe like a flat top mesa, or if you're on the top of a ridge and the elk are below you. It's a little less, like when you have elk below you, it's harder to call them up to you than it is if it's the other way around. But it's still a very good setup if that's all you have to work with because of the wind. You're at the top of the ridge, and the elk are feeding below you, and you're at the upper half. If you have the wind either straight in your face or parallel to you, you can get to the edge of the lip. And again, if you have a buddy, that buddy can call back behind it, and you can sit at the edge so that they have to come up to the top of the lip. And once they get to the top of the lip, they're already in your kill zone. This can work in reverse. Also, if the elk are on top and you are below, like I said, you might have an easier time for that elk to come across and drop down to you. Because it's been my experience that when the elk are above you, if a bull is above you and he's coming to challenge another bull, he's more likely to come challenge that bull because he feels like he has the upper hand because he has the higher ground. So I'm actually going to show you. This is actually a good setup as a single hunter because it's easier for you to slide back and forth, and you can see elk coming, coming up the ridge, and you can back away from the lip and move over quickly. So, you can get to the edge of the lip, and you're calling down to this bull, and you see, okay, oh, he's coming. Let me back up. And move over 20 yards, and he's going to come right up over here where he heard my last, cow sounds or my last bugle, whatever. And he's going to come up the ridge, get to the top, and you'll be able to shoot him that way. So I'm going to show you an example here. Let's see, share screen. Okay. Okay, so here you go. Pretty much like a flat top mesa. The elk are feeding down below here. And just like I said, so the wind's coming across me. I don't have any fear of it going down. It's, the thermal's coming up, whatever. You got to play the wind. So that these scenarios are all based on whether you have the right wind or not. But as a buddy system calling, you can have your caller here and have the hunter set up opposite of the wind, and that elk is going to work his way up, come up to the top here, and once he crests over, you're going to have a broadside shot. And there's no need for looking for that. This whole thing becomes your room, your whole effective range. I mean, whatever. Obviously, if it's not clear enough for you to shoot, then it's But wherever you have a clearing to shoot, where this elk is now, and like I said, if you're solo hunting and you don't have a buddy calling for you, this is a great setup because you can come to the edge, call, see the elk's reaction. He's coming up. You can move over to here. And once he comes up to the top, you're in position to shoot him. For me, this has always been my number one killing setup. And vice versa. If I'm down here and the elk is up here, it's not so easy to traverse back and forth and put yourself into place. So this is more of a buddy system than a single caller, but you still work as a single caller as well. I'm going to show you in this next slide a video of this very same scenario where I was down here, the elk was up here the bull was up here on the flat top, and we did a breeding scene, me and my buddy, and he was displaying, raking a tree with antlers and everything, got that bull fired up, came over the top, and came right into my kill zone. Okay. So we moved up basically. I was 25 yards from the very top of this. So we were just down low enough that he had to come to the edge. But once he came to the edge, we could see him. So. And you could kind of see how this is laid out. You see how it was sloping, down away from us. Those are the kind of shots you'll have where it's not completely, sorry, too much calling, where it's not completely head on. If you call here and you slide over real quick. So we were calling here and I slid over real quick, and I still had my buddy raking the tree down below me. This scenario, I've killed 2 bulls this way. This is actually me. This is one of my bulls. And it works very, very, very good. Again, it's just about recognizing the room. And the room in this scenario is the obstruction of the room, or where he has the doorway of the room is the lip of the edge. He had to come to the lip to verify with his eyes what he was hearing. And that's the most important part, is to be able to get them to a point where you can shoot them, where they have to verify with their eyes what they're hearing. And now, a lot of times, if you're not convincing, or if there's a lot of pressure, or they've been down this road before, they might want to smell you first. And if that's the case, you got to take into account which way is the wind working. If he comes using the wind, will I still have a shot? It's all these little nuances is about where you set up. Now, you got to work with what you have. And if you tucking up under a bush because you have this terrain here is pretty wide open. I mean, this vegetation is pretty wide open, except, there's got deadfall and stuff. But if I was up here on top with him, he'd be able to see me for a ways. So it's being creative with the call, letting curiosity kill the cat, so to speak. Don't overcall where he can pinpoint you, but enough that it keeps his interest and he wants to come and look. I'm going to stop right there again for questions. So if anybody has any questions.
I had a question where not from the bottom up, but from the top down.
Okay.
So, being like a spot and stalk deer hunter and like not a strong elk caller, because I've actually never hunted elk before except for this upcoming season.
Cool.
When do you make what factors do you use to make the decision whether you're going to call or you're just going to use the wind and kind of like stalk in?
Honestly, I'm of the school of thought that if you think you can sneak in on them and stalk them, do that.
Okay.
I only some guys like to call it just because that's what they're in it for. They're not going to kill it.
That's what you see like in all the videos.
Because that's the romantic right. part of that type of hunting. I've killed 2 bulls now in our late archery season here in Arizona, and they're not calling. They're just big deer, basically. It's just glassing and stalking. And 2 of the 4 cows that I've killed were just spot and stalk. So if the ultimate goal is to kill an elk, you do whatever you got to do to kill that elk. And if you feel like you got a better chance to kill it because you spotted it up and you think you can sneak in, by all means, man, do that. Like, there's no reason to call if you don't have to. Or if you don't want to, you know what I'm saying? Like, if some guys just want to, like I like to call them in because it's for me, it's a little bit more fun. But if I and I'm like, that bull, I really that bull, you know, and I know I got a better chance of sneaking up on him. I'm just going to sneak up on him. Simple as that. You know, and in my opinion, elk are a lot easier to stalk than deer. They're not, especially during the rut, they're not as focused as deer are. They're not as edgy as deer are. So you can get away with a little bit more. And I'm not saying going in there like Bigfoot stomping around, but, you know, you can get away with a little bit more sound and movement and whatnot. So, yeah, no problem. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. All right. Give me a second. So I'm going to talk a little bit about structural funnels. And structural funnels is any type of terrain feature that kind of forces the animal to move in a certain direction. And you can see this all the time when you're walking through the woods and you hit like a certain ridge line. That's where the trail is, because it's the path of least resistance. Structural funnels are automatically rooms. So if you are working a herd of elk and you get to, you know, one of these areas where, let's say it's a drainage, and you can see that there's specific trails coming up this drainage, chances are if that bull is below you and you've been able to call him, or you've enticed him enough that he's coming up, he's going to use one of those trails. So think about that. And how you would use that to your advantage. I want to kind of dissect the room a little bit better, because I know especially some of the guys that joined later on didn't get to hear what I was talking about when I was setting up a room. A good setup is really made up of three parts. It's the caller, the shooter, and the room. Now, the caller and the shooter might be the same person, but the caller should be within half the distance of your effective range. So if you feel comfortable shooting out to 60, the caller shouldn't be more than 30 yards, or your last call shouldn't be more than 30 yards from where your final setup is, if that makes sense. So how can I put this into a picture that you can understand? So if I'm going to hunt one of those little clearings, like that first example, that first video that I showed you, okay? And that clearing is 40 yards across. And I feel comfortable shooting an elk at 60 yards or 50 yards, okay? I'm going to walk back. If I'm by myself, I'm going to walk back into the trees. I'm going to call a few times. Once I get the reaction from that bull that makes me think he's going to come, I'll move up to half the distance, or to where the cover ends of my effective range. Another important part of the caller is again, I said this earlier, is finding a spot that will conceal the animal that you're trying to make. In this case, we're talking about elk. So whatever you're calling from behind, rocks, trees, bushes, a ridge top or a bump in the hill, it has to be large enough to hide the cow elk or the bull elk that you're trying to mimic. As the shooter, the shooter needs to think about how this elk is going to enter the room. So you want to place yourself in a position the elk is going to come across your bow perpendicular to you, to avoid those frontal shots that we were talking about earlier. So again, if you are the caller and the shooter, try, and don't be afraid to make noise, because elk make noise, like you're moving from one position to another. Call, do what you got to do, and then try to move yourself into a little bit better position that you're going to have a better angle. And the room, I'll reiterate it again, is a place that is your effective range with the weapon that you're shooting. So I'm going to show you a another example here. And let me share my screen. All right. Oops. Okay. So this particular setup is in the JPs. Lots of boulders here. Lots of stuff for me to work with. This is a wash right here. So it's a structural funnel. This is a structural funnel because if an elk comes here, he's not going to climb over these boulders. He has to go around these boulders. So the elk happened to be over here. We heard him bugling over here. I got perfectly in line with them. I had my hunter set up over here and I called them and they hit this funnel. I knew because of the wind was quartering. I was back far enough, but by the time he would get to my wind, and because the wind was kind of quartering to them, I know that they would feel even safer. That's kind of cheating the wind is a very important thing. So if you could cheat the wind like this, where the wind is kind of quartering to them and it's not going to catch your scent cone until they're too close and they're close enough that they're going to get shot or that you could shoot them. This is a great setup. And, we could have ran this thing a number of different ways because of what was given to us. I could have had the hunter move all the way up here. I could have had the hunter on this side. I could have had the hunter right in front of me. Because of the funnel, I knew that they would have to come. So, and as if I was calling for myself, this is a really easy call from this rock, move over to this rock. I got enough time for those elk to come across. Or even call from this rock and just go around to here so that they come across me like this and I could shoot at them this way. It's again, going back to visualizing how the elk will use the area, how they will enter the area, what they want to see, what senses they're going to want to use, and how do you fool those senses and how do you put yourself in a position that's going to work in your advantage. I'm going to show you a video. This is actually a spot that didn't work out for me, and I wanted to show you this. This elk was bugling. And now the video it's not going to show you all of this because I couldn't capture it. And I wish I had a GPS mark so I could have pulled this up on Google Earth and shown you this. But to understand this, so there was a 40 yard clearing, about 30 yards strip of thicker trees, and then another clearing, okay? And these elk were in, and on the other side of the other clearing was a thicker group of trees and kind of almost like a wash. The elk was in that wash, okay? He had a couple of cows with him. I could hear the cows. I could hear him bugling. He was bugling back, answering me. And I thought, I can get to that second clearing before he would respond to me. But I bugled, whatever. He answered me back. I said, okay, he just challenged me. He's not going to come up. I'm just going to, or he gave me a warning, like a warning bugles, like stay the fuck back, excuse my French, bugle. And I thought, let me get closer, get tight on his cows, and let me see if I can, either call his cows in or challenge him right in his bedroom. What ended up happening is, as I was moving down, he was coming towards me, and I got trapped in the first room, which is where I probably should have set up, but I thought, let me try to get closer. So you'll see this bull actually comes up to the edge of these trees that are on the other side of the room, and he starts displaying. Now, I was hunting in Arizona. I had my cameraman with me, but I didn't have anybody calling with me. The guy he's not a caller, so I was actually using a Fox Pro. And unfortunately, there's no sound on this because my cameraman didn't have the microphone turned on. But I would bugle with my Fox Pro behind me, which he was carrying, and you'll see him actually stop displaying. Oops, wrong way. So he came up to that field edge or to that edge of the trees, and he stopped because he could see into the clearing that I was, and he couldn't see any elk. But he was hot enough, he was infuriated enough that he said, well, you know what, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to show this bull, and I'm going to show his cows how dominant I am by beating the crap out of this tree. And he did that. And you'll see if you pay attention, every time I bugle, he stops and he takes his head and he looks around. Oh, there, he just did it right there. And what I kept doing is every time he was raking the tree, I would try to scoot forward and get closer to him. And I kept doing this. And finally I got to a spot. I was actually only 50 yards from him. I would have taken that shot. But there he goes. He looking again. But the tree was always in my way, and I could never. And eventually he just got tired of me and turned around and walked off, and I couldn't call him back. But this is just a prime example of why the room is important. And you'll get a hang up like this, even a super hot bull. This bull, like you saw how exposed I was. I was sitting next to a little tree. I mean, he could easily see me if he was like normally focused and whatever, but he was so enraged, but he wasn't enraged enough to go to a spot where he couldn't visually see me. And that's what I was trying to hit home with this whole talk from the get-go, is putting yourself in a position that makes them come to a spot that's close enough for you to shoot when they're coming to visually inspect what it is that's calling to them. Well, that's pretty much it. I was going to open it up to questions, and it doesn't have to be about this. It can be anything elk hunting, or honestly, I really don't care if it's anything hunting, period. If I know the answer, I'll answer it. Anybody have any questions? Nope.
Do you have any like newbie elk hunting, tips, just general?
Yes. Simplify everything. I'm sure you probably listen to every podcast out there.
Oh yeah.
Try to master every call out there. I just did a podcast with Joel Turner, and he does things pretty simple, and he's a pretty effective elk hunter. And it's very easy. And myself, I've been elk hunting for 20 years now, and actually more than that. I keep forgetting how old I am, but I forget all the time. Like, you try to learn the language. If you try to, I love Paul Medell, and I've been a student of him for a long time, and I've tried to learn all the language and try to listen and absorb all this knowledge. And what happens is you get out there, you get flustered because there's too much. If you're not doing it all the time and it's not second nature, you end up hurting yourself more than you help yourself. So go in with a plan. If you're hunting Oregon, you can go find burns and clear cuts and stuff like that. And you could glass if you want to try your spot and stalk. But for the most part, if you're hunting the coast, it's super thick, super thick.
This is going to be in Eastern, so
Eastern. Okay, yeah. Good. Yeah. Good. So you might be able to glass. I would look for, lower country, elk in lower country where you can actually use your binos, glass them, hunt them like deer, because that's what you know.
Yeah.
If you want to locate them, location bugle is a definite you need to learn, because it tells you where elk are. Cow call. I like the bull call and cow's bugle, and I like calf sounds. If you can master 4 sounds, those are the 4 sounds. If you don't have time to master 4 sounds and you can only do 2, location bugle and cow mews. I mean, really, I can't tell you how many elk have been killed with the guy walking around squeezing a hoochie mama. It happens every year. Are you setting yourself up for, 100% success doing that? No, but you could be hurting your elk hunting if you're going into the woods with too much. and, stick to the things like think about, so in Eastern Oregon, it's pretty dry.
Yeah.
Think about water sources, think about feed source, think about what the elk need. That time of year, bulls are really mostly just focused on, having sex. So, but the cows aren't. The cows have to go feed. And the bulls have to drink, and the cows definitely need a drink. So they're going to go to water, and they're going to bring bulls with them. They're going to go to feed. They're going to bring bulls with them. If you have time to scout, go out there and find large groups of cows, because that's where the bulls are going to be hanging out. Really, other than that, it just comes down to woodsmanship and thinking about what the needs of the animal are. And that goes for anything you're hunting. It's really, we make it a lot more difficult than it is. And I'm not saying, because it's not easy, but the concepts aren't difficult. We try to get into the minds of animals and, okay, yeah, the bucks of this and the lockdown and the moon phase. And believe me, I'm terrible. I get into all that. I geek out on all that. But when it comes down to it, it's really not that hard. The animals need this. And if I go in those areas, I'm going to encounter animals. It's pretty simple. Like, find what they need. Think about what, if it's dry, it's not raining, they're going to be tied to water. There's not going to be water in a lot of places. If there's water everywhere, that might not be a good, it's definitely not good on the coast. But in Eastern Oregon, especially if you're pretty far east and where they hit the JPs and stuff like that, it's pretty deserty, Yeah. So, any other questions? Or do you have anything else in that specific that I can clarify what I said? Jeff raised his hand. Who's Jeff?
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
Oh, you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
You have to unmute yourself. You're muted, buddy. Jeff, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Mute. There we go.
There you go. All right.
Hey, John, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
Good.
Hey, so I have just more of a scenario type question. This will be my third season, and the area that I've hunted has been primarily, it's been all in Idaho, and
Okay.
we're starting out low, and everything's basically very steep from the valley floors going up. And on a good number of occasions, I've heard elk at night, like a couple times close enough where I could hear their footsteps and them doing nervous grunts and stuff, like 20 yards from where I'm sleeping.
Nice.
And then in the morning, a couple times see them across the sage flats as they're starting to scurry back up the hill.
Okay.
And then I go up the hill and sometimes find some fresh pee and some fresh shit, and then never hear or see anything again.
Okay. So what I would do, it sounds like it's a pretty high pressured area. A lot of people hunting there. Is that?
There's a few. It's funny because I really thought that until I talked to other people, and then I realized, I'm not seeing nearly the number of people that other people are. So,
Right.
but it's very steep, and I think I've been lucky because I just go, every day is like 2,000 feet uphill hike.
Right. Gotcha.
Um,
Well, what
but
about
it's not
what about
fun.
switching your camp? What about switching your camp up higher? Is that even possible?
I mean, I could just go bivvy out up on the top, or over some ridges. I'm just not really sure, because then in the morning the air is going to be coming down. And
Yeah, but you cheat that. So, the air is coming down, but you don't go straight down at them. Once if you located them with sounds, or you seen them below you or whatever, you move over, then get to the same level as them and attack them from the same level, basically.
okay,
But what I would do too is, it sounds like they're pretty active at night. I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go out and start bugling and calling, and you get one answer back, get in real close, get in tight, 150 yards, and then shadow that herd till the sun comes up. You know?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. When I'm having a hard time, like, so here in Arizona, especially when it's hot, seasons that when it's hot, we have full moon. We're going to have that this year, unfortunately. They shut down so quick. It's just like you said, you know, you'll see them out and, you know, feeding in the sage flats or whatever. And then, you know, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, they're running up the hill to, you know, to go back down already. And over here, unlike Idaho, you can get them to fire off pretty much any time of day if they're aggressive enough, and if, you know, if there's hot cows in the area and so on and so. But here in Arizona, to get them to fire off, it's almost not like 10 o'clock comes, done. Like, done. I don't care what's going on. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll get out in the dark, and they're more likely to answer you back in the dark, in the cover of dark. And you just basically, you just keep calling just enough for them to answer you, for you to know the direction that you're moving in. I'll do it with like a red light, you know, and then just keep your distance. Once you get in close, it's kind of scary, you know, you're sitting out there in the middle of nowhere in the dark and just kind of sitting there trying to pretend like you're, you know, an elk, and you don't know if a lion's crawling up your back or what. But, you know, just you get in tight, and I say tight enough that you could keep tabs on it, but not enough that you're going to get busted. You know, really got to pay attention to, you know, study the topography and study what the wind's going to do. Okay, if once the sun comes up, you know, this is going to happen, whatever. Every morning the sun comes up, the wind switches, it goes that way. You know, think about those things, because that switch happens very quick right when the sun comes up. But just get in tight. And once you're in tight, then you can use some of those other tactics, like, you know, the bull calling cow's bugle or something like that. That's something that is going to elicit a response from that bull to come into you.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else?
Yeah. Hey, John, run me through your archery setup real quick, from maybe what bow, poundage, sight, arrow, and broadhead.
Well, I'm shooting the VXR. I've been with Matthews for a long time, and so I've stuck with them for almost 20 years now. My arrow setup, I'm shooting the gold tip Tours, and 3 Fletch right helical blazer, 2-inch blazer vane with a 3-degree helical on it. And I have a titanium collar with aluminum insert that's 70 grains. My total weight on this is 460 grains. I'm a middle of the road guy. Like I like about 16% FOC, 15 to 17% is what I shoot for FOC wise. I don't like my arrows to travel any less than 280 feet per second. I feel like shot placement is more important than penetration power, and you know, so I like the best of both worlds. I don't want to have a super light arrow. I don't want to have like a 300 grain arrow, but I don't want to have a 550 grain arrow or 600 grain arrow either. I've tried that route before, and when you're hunting and you're excited, you don't tend to follow through on your shots. And the first thing you do when you don't follow through is drop your arm. And when you're shooting an arrow that's slow, a lot of times that dropping of the arm will really translate to that arrow, and you're going to hit low. As far as broadheads are concerned, I've been shooting Schwackers, 2-inch, 100 grain Schwackers for, this will be my 10th or 11th year, something like that. I was on their staff for a long time. Just recently, last year, I left. I still love the broadhead, and I only left because of politics, not because I didn't. I've killed everything from elk to jackrabbits with them, and you know, they're an excellent broadhead. But you know, if you want something that's a little bit more fail safe when it comes to hunting something like an elk, I like single bevel, 2-blade single bevel. This is the style broadhead right here.
That a kudu?
No, this is not a kudu. This is actually a company in Australia. It's called Cayuga, and this is called their Pilot Cut. I actually developed a broadhead just like this with bleeders. I never brought to market. So when I saw they had these, and I can get these for a lot cheaper than making my own, I started buying those. But I just did a broadhead test. It's on my blog, and I had 34 different broadheads, mostly fixed blade, because a lot of guys were talking about, or asking me about elk hunting and what's the best penetrating and this and blah, blah, blah. So I decided to find out for myself. There's a couple of mechanicals in there, including the Sever and the Schwacker. Yeah, I shoot 70 pounds. I'm a 29-inch draw. Every once in a while, I'll bump it up to 75 with the switch weight. If I'm elk hunting, I'll do that. And
Yeah.
it's a matter if I feel like reciting in my pins or not. But no, like my first bull elk I shot it with a 400 grain arrow. It was a 340 spine, and it was with a Crimson Talon, and it did the job fine. You know, they were killing them with stones and sticks before we had all our fancy equipment. And
True.
believe me, like, I'm a geek when it comes. I geek out on all the technology. I love it. But in the end, it all comes down to practice. I actually just wrote an article, if you guys are interested, go on my blog, johnstallone.me, about improving your hunting through your practice, basically, and controlling the things that you can control. Because there's so many uncontrollable, things that you can't control in hunting. You can't control the wind. You can't control what the animal's going to do. You can't control the weather. There's so many variables that you can't control, but there's so many things that you can control. And it's important if you want to have consistent success. And all the guys that I know that have consistent success year in, year out, they all spend time on the details, on the stuff that they can control.
Sure.
Being the most well-practiced you can, having the most, like, a finely tuned bow. Like I super tune my bow. My bow, in all honesty, at 15 yards, I could shoot that broadhead on a unfletched arrow, and it's going to hit the mark. Like, that to me is important to know, because all of it builds confidence, and confidence is the number one deciding factor, I think, for killing animals. Like, and I know it from year to year. So the last 2 years, I haven't had a whole lot of time. It was a little easier when my son was younger and my daughters were younger, and now they're older and there's more stuff, and there's more stuff on my wife's plate. So, like, I needed to be more involved, and my guiding business grew more, so I had less time for myself. I wasn't as confident last year or the year before, and those were statistically the 2 worst years that I've had in my whole hunting career. And I have more experience now. I went from shooting 7 to 10 animals a year to, shooting 2 or 3 in the last 2 years. And it's all about confidence, and confidence is brought about by your preparation. So, Jeff, you have your hand up again? Did you have another question, or is that still up there from before? Okay. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry. I go off on tangents. I'm really good at that.
Yeah, no, that was good. So you're not opposed to shooting mechanicals?
No, not at all.
Face blades or?
No, I mean, hey, like, there's certain mechanicals I don't like. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and bash anybody. So I'm not going to tell you which ones I don't like, but there's certain ones that rob a lot of kinetic energy, And for big animals like elk, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like rage for elk, even though I know there's probably been plenty of elk that have been killed with rage. I mean, I've just seen them fail enough times that I've had too many elk get wounded while I was guiding because of that. So I tend to stay away from stuff that I like that. But yeah, I'm not opposed to it at all. No, all my bull elk, and I killed 2 red stag also, which, by the way, is the toughest animal I've ever killed. With my Schwackers, so those are mechanicals.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else have any questions? No. All right.
I think Jay had a question.
Oh, Jay, you have a question?
John, what units do you guide for in Arizona?
Primarily everything that's around Flagstaff and Unit 22 and 23. I'll go into 3A, 3B, 3C, and I know Unit 1 pretty well, but I don't usually get those clients anyway. So my main focus is 7 East, 7 West, 11M, 6A, 6B, and 8. I've guided 10 and 9 before also, but 10, actually, that bull, that first example, if you were on from the beginning, that video where the bull comes in and my client shot him far back, that was a 10 bull, actually. So,
What's your favorite out of those units you listed?
my favorite unit?
You listed. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, those are not considered the trophies.
No.
High end, but they're not the top.
No, actually, and in that list that I gave you, as far as, right there around Flagstaff, 7 West and 8 are the only 2 that are kind of considered the second tier. The rest are all third tier, and actually 7 East now is like bottom of the barrel. That unit has become shot out because they have environmentalists that are pushing that they keep the tag numbers high because the elk are killing off the aspen trees. So I don't get it. Save the aspens but kill the elk. But so that unit in the past, I mean, still to this day, the biggest bull I've ever hunted and the biggest bull I've ever seen was in that unit. It still has the potential because it has San Francisco peaks. It still has the potential to produce a giant bull. And I feel that way about Arizona anyway. There's really no unit that doesn't have the potential because we have the genetics and we have the minerals in the soil. And so we're just kind of heavily dependent on water, but whether or not they'll produce, there's a 400-inch bull in every unit in the state. So
Out of all those units for the medium to high end units, which one would you say has the easiest terrain for an in shape older man? My dad and I each have 14 points. So we're at that point where we're kind of deciding when we're going to go. Do we wait another couple years and try to get something really nice, or do we go for 8 or 11 or something like that? But not 7 foot in there. He's going to be 65 years old in shape, but you wait 14 plus years to draw an elk tag, you're going to hunt hard.
I wouldn't put in for 11, not with 14 points. I would not waste 14 points at 11. I would say with 14 points,
2 years, 3 years to get into something.
7 West would be an excellent unit for you.
Okay.
There's giant bull. We're actually guiding. Oh, we're not guiding. One of my guides has that tag this year. It's a great unit. Has a lot of area that you can glass. There is spots that are super steep, but a lot of it's flat. So you kind of have the best of all worlds. And that's really in every unit in Arizona. Really, the ones that are really tough. 23 is tough because it's almost all steep and thick and whatever. But that's also where the giant biggest bulls are. One's a little tough. 3B can be a little tough. Just terrain-wise, it can be tough, not hunting. I mean, 6A has the highest density. So if you just want to kill a good bull and have interaction, but they also put a shit ton of tags in that unit. It's your best opportunity to draw one. And if you're okay with trying to get away from people, just get out there in advance and, spike out pretty far. You can get a good bull in 6A. 6B's, I'm not guiding a guy, but I'm doing a scouting package for a guy in 6B this year. In years past, it's been great, but this year I'm not seeing what I normally see. Things are kind of shifting a little bit. So
when you say spike out, do you mean like traditional backpack, or do you mean just pull off on the road and try to set up a wall tent type stuff?
No, I mean, actually when I say spike out, I mean, backpack in. And you really can't backpack in too far there. I mean, you're not going to have to travel far. I'm talking about like a 2-mile backpack, but just get far enough away from the roads. That's the one thing about Arizona. There's roads everywhere. Like, there's units that have plenty of wilderness too. So I saw a couple of other hands go up there. Did I answer all your questions? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Did I miss that? I saw something that said hands participants. Chuck.
Hey, hi, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
What's up, my friend and Quack there, Nelson. He's too shy he's been asking all the questions, but he's been too shy to ask about Eastern Oregon and a suggestion for an area up there.
Unfortunately, never hunted Eastern Oregon.
I didn't want to spot burn. I don't want to ask for spots,
I'm a guy who teaches you how to fish and doesn't give you the fish. So
exactly, it's cool.
I honestly don't know Eastern Oregon. I've never hunted it. I've only hunted in the coast. I've only hunted Roosevelt's. But from what I understand, the terrain is a lot like here in Arizona. It's ponderosas and junipers and cedars. So, I just get on a map, man. Find all the permanent water, and if you got a couple ideas and you want to shoot me over an email, I'll look over what you're looking at and I'll tell you if I think it's a good area. I mean, I have no problem helping you out with that. But
all right,
I don't even have a spot to give you, brother. Sorry. All right. Anything else? All right, cool. Well, guys, thanks for coming on, and I appreciate you all popping in and supporting West Coast Archery.
Thank you, John. We really appreciate your time. Appreciate your expertise.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, anytime. I was a little all over the place. I'm not used to giving presentations online, and the technology of it all kind of flustered me. So it's kind of, but you would think with all the podcasts I do, I would have a pretty good handle on this stuff, but I don't.
Excellent job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right.
All right.
Night.